23. 23. The bright eyes, windows onto beauty. By Xie Feng. Of the six senses of vision, hearing, olfaction, taste, touch, and telegnosis felt by the six sense organs of eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind, vision accounts for more than 80% of our understanding of the material world. Although more than 80% of the knowledge of non-material world comes from the telegnosis, vision is the foundation for telegnosis, thus eyes are called the windows of soul. Vision relies mainly on eyes. Although purely a material physiological structure, eyes can project the forms and movement of the boundless universe onto our brains, which enables us to survive effectively in the complicated nature. Without eyes, a man cannot live effectively. Without eyes, the mankind cannot survive effectively. Then how do eyes come about? Is it possible that the miraculous and intricate eyes have evolved from a monad and developed into the fully functional and perceptive eyes of mankind? Man's eyes have two functions. One is the function of vision, and the other is the function of aesthetics. The formation of vision involves an entire system of highly efficient image analysis structure. Strictly speaking, the objects we see are not the same objects, because a period of time has passed in the process from the perception of an object to the imaging of the object on the retina to the conceptualization of the object after being reflected to the brain by the nerve system. Although it lasts only several 10,000ths microsecond, theoretically the image in the brain is already not the image of the real object. For example, a flower we see may have withered after some time, but the flower in the brain is still the one originally reflected. For another example, when a relative of ours has passed away and is no longer alive, our brains still retain the lovely voice and happy countenance of the deceased. How does vision happen? Vision is a reaction to the stimulation of light energy of the eyes. An object will reflect the light from the sun or other light source. Via pupils and lens, the reflected light will fall on the retina for imaging to take place. Then, stimulated by light energy, the nerve cells on the retina will convert light signal into bioelectrical signal, which will deliver the vision information to the nerve center via optic nerves and finally to the brains. The brain's mechanism for analysis, judgment, and identification will form the concepts of the object size, shape, and color, and then pass on these concepts to the related departments of the body, ordering them to maintain a high vigilance and be ready to respond to emergencies. For the smooth running of such a complicated program, a man of supreme wisdom is needed to conduct perfect design of the eyes, just like the design of cameras by scientists. We can know that the eyes are designed by the greatest creator through the following passages. 1. What is visible to the eyes is only the visible light with wavelength ranging between 400 millimicrons and 760 millimicrons. Beyond this visual range, the world is completely different. The blue sky is no longer blue sky. Our eyes will be dazed by the variegated and weirdly colorful scenes created by the cosmic rays like infrared, ultraviolet, gamma ray, beta ray, X-ray, electromagnetic wave, and particle flux. In less than 10 minutes, our nerve system will become turbulent and we will all go mad. Moreover, we may occasionally view spirit, immortals, goblins, devils, and monsters, paradise and hell, or even the thinking waves in other people's mind. Then we will not be able to behave like a man and enjoy the beauty of life in this muddle-headed and unrestrained manner. 2. Make the eyes possess the capability to resolve different colors. Within the photosensory cells in the cone of human eye's retina, there are 3 different photopigments, which can respectively absorb the blue light with a wavelength of 445 millimicrons, the green light with a wavelength of 535 millimicrons, and the red light with a wavelength of 570 millimicrons. The mixture of the 3 lights in different proportions has created the great variety of colors. Our eyes possess the capability to distinguish the subtle shades of color. Otherwise, we will all be colorblind and cannot fully enjoy the infinite beauty of nature. 3. Make the eyes have a broad vision. Our eyeballs are only 24 millimeters from back to front, 23 millimeters from top to bottom, and 23.5 millimeters horizontally. The pupil of the eye is only 2.5 to 4 millimeters in diameter, but if we skim widely, we can see the views within the scope of dozens of kilometers. How wonderful it is! If our eyes do not possess such a function and can see only a place the size of our eyes, our field of vision will be extremely limited, just like looking into a few meters ahead through the hole of a bamboo hole. We cannot see the wolf even if it is already beside us. We cannot discover the snake even if it has climbed beneath our feet. Won't that be a great trouble? 4. Make the eye possess stereoscopic vision. People often say we can see clearly at a glance. But can one see clearly with one eye? Try closing one eye and see if you can pull a thread through the needle's hole, or if you can pour strong sulfuric acid accurately into a small test tube in the chemical lab. Therefore, it is important to have two eyes. 5. Make the eyes possess the function of winking. The eyes will wink every 2 to 8 seconds. Why do eyes wink? If the eyes remain open all the time, they will easily become dry and astringent and may attract dusts and bacteria. If this lasts for long, the eyesight will fail or even be lost. Through winking, the tears may be evenly distributed in the eyes to wet the cornea and conjunctiva, preventing the eyes from dryness and astringency, maintaining the luster of cornea, and cleaning the conjunctiva sac of dust and bacteria. See how considerate the greatest creator is. Make the eyes possess a mechanism of self-protection. The eye is an intricate, sensitive, and delicate organ which cannot be protected by relying on man's self-consciousness. Thus, the greatest creator has designed eyebrows, eyelashes, eyelids, and tears for protection. Growing on the protruding superciliary ridges, eyebrows ward off the dust and sweat from above like an umbrella, preventing them from entering the eyes. Eyelashes resemble bamboo curtains or 2 platoons of embattled sentinels, who are always ready to keep away and block off the unannounced invasion of the enemies like dust and microorganism. Eyelids are like a loyal soldier guarding the frontier line of the eyes. Whenever attacked by foreign matters or shown by strong light, the eyelids will immediately close up and protect the eyes within them so that the foreign matter will not cause damage to the eyeballs or the strong light will not hurt the optic nerves. Whenever foreign matter or bacteria has invaded into the eyes, the tears from lacrimal gland will pour out and flush away the foreign matter. Meanwhile, the lysozyme and immunoglobulin in the tears will on the one hand inhibit the propagation and growth of bacteria and on the other hand will kill bacteria by decomposing the sucrose mortierolate existing in the cell wall and dissolving bacteria. Let's see how perfect the protection mechanism is. Is this a result of evolution? Ever since the moment man appeared on the earth, our eyes have possessed the above functions. Our eyes have never experienced evolution or retrogression. Our eyes have not gone through the gradual perfection and evolution. Apart from the above visual functions, eyes also have aesthetical functions. We can derive aesthetic enjoyment from bright eyes, talking eyes, amorous eyes, and leering eyes, and so on. I have owned hundreds of schemes to adjust the size and position of the eyes to find out whether there exists a better design of the eye size and position. For example, place the eyes at the top of the head, at the back of the head, or on the buttocks, or in the palms, or beneath the mouth, or exchange the positions of the eyes and the ears, or replace human eyes with the eyes of the horses, or those of rats or frogs. It turned out that only the current size and positions of the eyes are just right, and any slightest changes or alterations will only lead to ugliness. Unbelievable? Just try it. We can see the greatest creator from our eyes in the magic and profundity of his wisdom. Open all, close all. Chanyuan Corpus E. February 2024. CHM. Generated by CHM Editor. 24. 24. The marvelous biological remote sensing, telesthesia, and telepathy. By Xia Feng. Let's first look at the following cases. Case 1. Huiyan reported in 4 Flowers and 4 Dragons, the story of 2 quadruplets. If one of the quadruplets catches a cold, the other 3 will surely have a fever. 3 brothers yawned in step with each other, with 3 little mouths opening simultaneously. They uttered ah, sonorously as if proclaiming their manliness. Case 2. There is a report called the unexpected reunion of kindred, the details of which I cannot remember very well. It relates the reunion of mother and daughter after a separation of more than 4 decades. Under a strange combination of circumstances, the daughter was adopted by other people. So she took the foster mother for her birth mother, and indeed she did not know that she had a natural mother, who was now old and lived alone, knowing nothing about her only child, who had been separated from her since very young. A curious coincidence brought the daughter into an out-of-way alley where she coincidentally met with an old lady. Because she had accidentally helped the old lady, she was invited by the old lady into her humble hut, where she accidentally saw a picture on the wall of the old lady when she was young. She was astonished because her foster mother had given her a photo, which had been placed at the bottom of the chest for decades. The photo on the wall was the same as the one she had placed at the bottom of the chest. After talking with the old lady, she came to know that the old lady in front of her was none other than her own mother. The mother and the daughter felt both misery and happiness. Thanks to the mercy of heaven, the old mother had eventually found her daughter that she missed every day. Case 3. Dead Body Returns Home reported that when the famous American actor Charles Cleveland died in 1899, he was buried in Galveston, Texas. The next year, a hurricane flooded the cemetery. The family of the deceased searched everywhere, but with no result. However, 28 years later, in September 1927, this magical coffin mysteriously reappeared. It drifted for 3,000 kilometers and arrived at the homeland of Cleveland, Prince Edward Island. Case 4. According to the omens of mice house moving after the World War II, Mr. and Mrs. Raymond Macy, who were in the film industry in New York, rented an apartment at number 80 Street of Eastborough. One day Mrs. Macy spotted from the window on the second floor that many mice were pouring out in full force from the house in the opposite, running out as fast as they could. Shortly after, the old lady living in the opposite house died of suicide. After the death of the old lady, the mice returned in troops to the house. Sometime later, a blonde dancing, fashionably dressed girl moved in, who was often accompanied by a young man. One day the flock of mice once again fled from the house. A few days later, this young man died of heart attack. After the death of the young man, the dancing girl moved out. Strange enough, the mice once again returned to their old home. A short time later, a young industrialist took residence in the house. After a period of peace, those mice left the house for another time. Mrs. Macy has a hunch that something unexpected might happen again. True enough, this young industrialist died of a plane crash. It is said that the house was built by a famous lawyer who suffered lunacy shortly after the building was completed and eventually killed himself by jumping into Hudson River. Case 5. According to the report of miraculous biological telesthesia, as early as last century, Professor Gregory of Edinburgh University had introduced an experiment of Berua. In the experiment, Berua divided the 50 snails into 25 pairs. Each pair was separated from the other pairs. After some time, the same letter was written on the shells of each pair of snails, and one of the pair was brought to America, the other still remained in Paris. Later, at a given time, the snail staying in Paris was stimulated with electric current. At the same time, the one brought to American also exhibited the same electric stimulation reactions. Well, so much for the example of remote sensing, telesthesia, and telepathy. Remote sensing. First, I'd like to make it clear that the remote sensing I am talking about is purely biological remote sensing, which is different from the electromagnetic wave remote sensing, sonar remote sensing, and geophysical field remote sensing applied in aviation, spaceflight, navigation, meteorology, mapping, global positioning, resources survey, environmental protection, disaster prevention, hydrology and geology, and archaeology. In the mythology, the legend of deification, there are two people with special ability, one called clairvoyant and the other clairaudience. Both of them possess the ability of sensing everything happens in Jiangxia staging camp from far distance. The mice's behavior in Case 4 is an example of animals' remote sensing. The special ability of remote clairvoyance frequently mentioned in science of Qigong is also a kind of remote sensing. Then what is remote sensing? Remote sensing is a biological ability for gathering information on a given person or object, or an area at a distance by receiving the thinking wave or electromagnetic waves they have sent out via directed thinking. Remote sensing is not a mysterious phenomenon, rather a resonant frequency. Just like a television channel that receives electromagnetic signals of live broadcasting transmitted by a TV station and informs us of the happenings in a different place, or like a radio which picks up the frequency of a certain radio station and broadcasts the clear voice of the announcer. Remote sensing is a natural phenomenon in the universe, but its occurrence is very unusual. Strictly speaking, the scenes described in science fiction are not sheer fabrications but a reality that has transcended time and space. Some people can accurately predict the future because they have actually mastered the technology of remote sensing. For example, the French Dr. Nostradamus, the eccentric Dorothy, Sakyamuni, and so on. The death of Russian Tsar Ivan by the end of the 16th century had been accurately predicted by 60 Russian prophets 12 days prior to his death. It is said that some people had given up the journey by Titanic for remote sensing its forthcoming disaster. There are a lot of prophecies in the Bible, the Quran, and the Sutra. Actually, these prophecies are a kind of remote sensing. My description of 36-dimension space is also a result of remote sensing. The explanation for the origins of the universe, man, and life is also only an apperception via telegnosis, an apperception that transcends time and space. The explanation does not result from the poor knowledge and logical reasoning I have acquired. Scientifically, my arguments and argumentations are not adequate, but I believe man will ultimately know that I am right. There are only a very limited number of people capable of remote sensing, just as there can be only several queen bees in a swarm of bees. The world will fall into chaos if everyone is capable of remote sensing. So I shall drop the topic here. If you are capable of remote sensing, it is your good luck. Telesthesia. As a physiological phenomenon, telesthesia is an imperceptible physiologically transferred induction. The most special case is the lactation after birth. Take humankind for example. No matter how plump a woman's breast may be, no matter how many sexual intercourses a woman may have, and even if pregnancy has reached 10 months, lactation will not occur as long as the child is not born. Only after a baby is born, the baby's need for milk will stimulate the physiological reaction and milk will begin flowing. In the same way, the tear duct will secrete tears only after foreign matter has entered the eye or emotions have fluctuated too greatly. Cases 1, 2, and 5 are examples of biological telesthesia. Remote sensing can be acquired through conscious cultivation, while telesthesia is an unconscious physiological behavior, a physiological mechanism, and a natural program designed by the greatest creator. For this, we will not say much. Telepathy. Telepathy is the universal phenomenon in the universe. Everything has telepathy. Strictly speaking, all activities of life forms are the result of telepathy. More accurately, all the phenomena we see are the result of telepathy. The macroscopic and microscopic universes are both the result of telepathy. Both organic substance and inorganic substance are capable of telepathy. Man, animals, plants, and insects have telepathy. Mountains, rocks, rivers, and weather all are capable of telepathy. The effective evidence for the telepathy of microscopic matter can be found in the fact that the famous Buddhist master Jinkong cited on many occasions the Japanese scientists' research on the crystal of water molecules when expounding on Mahayana's Sutra of Infinite Life. He said that when we said thanks and love to water, the arrangement of water molecules will be a very beautiful crystal, and that when we are hostile and indifferent to it, the arrangement of water molecules will be a chaotic assemblage. Hence, Master Jinkong told us that since human body is 70% water, as long as we show more care for water in our body, then the water molecules in our body will act effectively and will increase our health. We may be free from illness all our life. He went further to enlighten us that since 70% of the earth is covered by water, as long as we don't pollute the rivers, lakes, and oceans, the earth will not be inflicted with floods, inundations, droughts, and hailstones. Like the gravitation between everything, the telepathy between everything exists and occurs everywhere and at any time. The most obvious example is electromagnetic induction, sound wave induction, photoelectric induction, and so on. Now there are automatic doors in cities around the globe. The door closes when man leaves and opens when man approaches. Some street lamps will be automatically turned on when it becomes dark and will be automatically turned off when dawn breaks. Some anti-theft devices will automatically set off alarms when a person enters a security zone. The telepathy between life forms happens at every moment. The quadruplets encase one the other three will have a fever as long as one of them has caught a cold. When one yawns, the others will open their mouths simultaneously. It is also the case with twins and multibirths. There are different degrees of telepathies occurring at any moment between mother and daughter, father and son, lovers and enemies. The abnormal behaviors of animals before earthquakes, the pain of joints suffered by arthritis patients before the heavy rain, the frantic movement of insects before the storms, the suicidal behavior of plants like bamboos prior to a disaster, the sudden fidget and vexation experienced by people occasionally, all these are the results of telepathy. The day before yesterday, November 30th, 2003, I ran into a former colleague of mine. He has rented a luxury villa. He joyfully told me that in the courtyard of the villa there were 4 rows of grapevines as long as 30 meters. He told me that the house owner said these grapevines had not produced grapes for many years. After he lived in the villa, he watered the grapevines every 3 days, applied fertilizers, hoed up weeds, and dug up the soil. Now the grapevines are heavily laden with grapes. He said that he could earn a handsome sum of money from grapes alone. He also said excitedly, plants will repay when they get enough care and protection from human. This is also a kind of telepathy. In front of the window of the master bedroom in my yard there is a tree, whose name is unknown to me. It blooms the small white and purple flowers. Each time when the tree is in full bloom, it will be covered all over with the flower petals, which emanate a strong fragrance. This year the tree has flowered 1 time before the rain season. At the time I stood in front of the flowers, muttering to myself, these flowers are so beautiful and fragrant. How wonderful it would be if the tree is in bloom every day. It would be very good if the tree can flower for many more times every year. It never occurred to me that 3 months later, the tree was in flowers once again. I asked the gardener Gift, who had worked in this compound for nearly 10 years, whether this tree would flower twice every year. He replied, no, it flowers only once every year, and I don't know why it has flowered twice this year. Suddenly I realized that it was my wish that had prompted it to flower one more time. I felt very guilty. This is a flower tree with great spiritual nature. To satisfy my private needs, it has overstretched itself against the law of nature. It must have tried hard. The second time, the flowers have so faint a fragrance that one can hardly smell it. This is the result of overspending. I made apologies in mind. Flower tree, I am deeply indebted to you for your kind-heartedness. I understand you now. Please don't overdone yourself again in the future. Meanwhile, Life Chanyuan will try its best to protect you and all the flowers, grass and trees. You are silently dedicated to mankind, flowering to beautify the environment, bearing fruits for people to savor, afforesting to conserve water and soil, exhaling oxygen and inhaling carbon dioxide to purify the environment, photosynthesizing to create nourishment carbohydrates for man and animals. Without you, there would be no insects, animals, and us humans. You are the foundation on which life depends. Life Chanyuan will make it its tenet to protect the life of all living things. We humans should no longer be arrogant, conceited, and ungrateful. There is telepathy between plants and man, and there is also telepathy between man and gods. I have a friend whose father was nearly 80 years old. He was kind-hearted, amicable, and genial. He was very healthy in Zimbabwe. But there was a period he was vexed and troubled, insisting on returning home, his homeland in China. My friend had no choice but to send him back to his old home. Very soon, the old man passed away while asleep. Why did the old man feel anxious and eager to return home when he was enjoying very good health and life in Zimbabwe? This is the beckoning of gods. Although without knowing, the old man had experienced telepathy physiologically. Moreover, there are also telepathies in many of our daily recreational activities. Last month, November 2003, my wife and I played poker games with some friends for 6 hours. The cards in my wife and my hand were very bad from beginning to the end. My friends had climbed over several mountains while my wife and I were still fixed at the starting point. Finally, I realized it was because my wife and I felt upset and distracted several days before. When one's mind is disturbed, the cards will also be a mess. Only if one has a calm mind will he get very good and orderly cards. You can have a try if you feel interested. Recently, another case of telepathy happened to me. I have got the habit of reading Reader. Once I read several articles by the Taiwanese writer Lin Qingxian and discovered that Mr. Lin has very high spiritual nature. As far as I see it, however ignorant I may be, Mr. Lin is one of the people with the highest spiritual nature in Chinese nation. I consider it great luck and happiness to read more of his books. But I am abroad and have very little chance to buy his books. I have never expected that recently a girl of my children's generation came from China and brought me 2 books written by Mr. Lin, Search the Homeland of Soul. Why did she buy books instead of anything else for me? Why did she buy Lin Qingxuan's book instead of other books? It turned out that this was a result of my telepathy. Seth said, physiological symptoms are communications from the inner self, indications that we are making mental errors of one kind or another. That is to say, the physiological disease is an induction of physiology to psychology and psychopathy. All the wars, conflicts, natural disasters, and diseases in human history are the results of the mutual telepathy between gods, man, animals, and plants. And the deluge in the period of Noah is also the consequence of the induction of man's conceit and arrogance. Remote sensing, telesthesia, and telepathy are all an embodiment of Tao, as described by Lao Tzu in Tao Te Ching. And Tao is the materialization of the psychic energy of the greatest creator. In the final analysis, remote sensing, telesthesia, and telepathy is a program designed by the greatest creator to maintain the balance of nature. We can hence feel the unfathomable profundity of the greatest creator's wisdom. '25. 25. Pythogenesis, nourishment for new life. By Xie Feng. Pythogenesis is a natural phenomenon. It is the transformation of putrefaction, corruption, and decomposition. Putrefaction, corruption, and decomposition are bad, but pythogenesis is a conversion of energy and a transition of life. You can observe a fallen apple from the tree. It rots at the beginning, but after a period of time only an empty shell is left. Then after some time, even the empty shell vanished. Where has the entire apple gone? It has undergone the process of pythogenesis. All things in the material world will go through pythogenesis, without which there would be no such material world. Just imagine, how can we have today's environment and civilization if the carcasses of animals remain intact for thousands of years, if the leaves falling from the trees remain as fresh as ever, if the piled garbage does not rot, if the slave society and feudal system does not corrupt, and if despotism is always maintained, if the original religion does not corrupt, and if the ancient civilizations last for eternity? The rotten carcasses of animals and the decayed plants will be decomposed by microorganisms in soil or water and converted into aliment, which to be absorbed and utilized by other plants. The ancient religion and civilization were decomposed by the development of the times and converted into a knowledge and wisdom, which to be absorbed and utilized by the present religion and civilization. How perfect the design is! The waste is changed into valuable materials and the corrupted is turned into wonders. Who is capable of such considerate and flawless thinking? The greatest creator. '26. 26. Life and death, a phenomenon puzzling mortals and deities. This earth sees the birth and death of a huge amount of animals and plants every day and every moment. Life and death is a universal phenomenon in nature. Everyone has embarked upon the journey to death since the moment of his birth. The happiness of life and the sadness of death are the basic emotions of mortals and deities. A family will be bursting with happiness at the birth of a baby, and a family suffering loss of a relative will be overwhelmed with extreme sadness and grief. With the exception of the Jesus and Buddha Sakyamuni, who are so transcendental and free from vulgarity and have such great wisdom, few can escape from this enigmatic circle and understand the real signification of life and death. The tragedy of life lies in the lack of enlightenment and in the inability to escape from the transmigration of life and death. For thousands of years, people have been seeking the way to immortality. Modern medicine and science are also probing into the secrets of longevity. I wonder why people are so happy about life but so grieved at death. Seeking life entails endless troubles, and seeking death brings infinite benefits. What would the world look like if none of the plants and animals on the earth dies, and if our great-great-great-grandparents survive till today and each family has a thriving population? Some will think it would be best if all of them die and all of us survive. Well, suppose they all die and we all survive, see if we are better off. It would be okay as long as we can distinguish who they are and who we are. We must know at the same time that everyone wishes the same as you and me. Then in the end, who are to die and who are to survive? Is it so good to live and so bad to be dead? Take a look at human history. Pay a visit to your neighbors and ponder over the question of what good there is to live and what harm there is to die. Let's forget about the time immemorial and talk about the time from Sakyamuni till present. How many people have lived a good life and how many have died a bad death? Let's take the examples in Chinese society. Antenatal training has been provided even before a baby is born. Abandoning the music of nature, the greatest creator, God, and Buddha, people spare no efforts to inoculate the fetus with the imperfect music of mankind. Immediately after birth, adults try every means to provide the little babies with toys and cartoons instead of having them get in touch with flowers, birds, insects, and fish in nature. Before the age of schooling, the children have begun their preschool education, learning piano, painting, kung fu, and dancing. They have no opportunity to bring their own instinct into play nor have fun in nature. When the children have just begun to know about the world around them, they will be burdened with heavy and formless pressures. In addition to the heavy school bags and the endless homework, adults spare no efforts to add extra education for them. Moreover, endlessly lecturing began to pout onto children. You must be someone you have to get full marks in exams, otherwise you'll be lagging behind others. Child, I am doing all this only for your good. You must work hard and strive to become an excellent student. You must enter key middle school and then qualify yourself for study at prestigious university. Otherwise, you will have no foothold in this society. Why are you so fond of playing, my kid? Look at Xiao Ming, she is so diligent and so promising. You must learn from her. These and many more lecturing have left children at a loss. The 100-meter dash begins with middle school. Students are preoccupied with study and examinations day and night, teachers and parents are carefully supervising and urging, and the society is imprudently promoting the atmosphere of elites. As a result, the splendor of human nature is inundated in the endless darkness. Will their college life be relaxing? The answer is no. The comparison between classmates for superiority in terms of food, clothes, residence, and transportation is only a small matter if compared with the authoritative indoctrination in ideological field and the blind and unlimited pursuit of knowledge. College should be a place to cultivate noble moral sentiments, but the majority of colleges are fostering the lively and natural men but the robots that have lost on self. We must bring honor to our ancestors, we must win glory for the motherland, and we must win credits for our nation. The colleges have been fostering the narrow-minded notions. What's worse, some colleges and organizations are teaching students how to make their first fortune, how to rise in the world, and how to attract handsome men and beautiful women to themselves. This is a worrisome era. The real distress begins with the graduation from the universities. There are a bewildering number of roads ahead. Which one shall I take? The unbridgeable gap between dreams and reality, the intangible conflicts between ethics and interest, the marriage, the houses, the cars, and the expected splendid success, all these have put university students at loose ends, which has fragmented the entirety of their spiritual nature to an unbearable scene. If university graduates are like this, then those with no university education must have experienced even greater conflicts and misery in mind. Marriage and having of a family does not secure one a harbor to shelter the storm. Heartrending matters occur frequently, and it is only normal human feelings to support aged people and bring up children. What people cannot bear is the friction and battles between husband and wife. Birth, death, illness, and old age, departure, resentment, failure to accomplish one's desire, and transience, all the beauties of life have been ruined completely. We see people on the streets, each of them looking vigorous and elegant. But once we get to know their inner world, we will find every one of them emaciated and fatigued. Many people in my neighborhood are rich businessmen. They all have villas, servants, and limousines. Then they should be happy and satisfied, right? The answer is no. When I chatted with them one day, one of them said, "Actually, if I have 1,000,000 yuan, RMB, I will be doing well in China." Another person, as if he has heard the talking of an alien, taunted, "A million? What can you do with it? It is barely enough to buy and decorate an apartment." Another said to me, "I heard you are writing a book, right? You are a little old-fashioned. Don't you know that in today's time you are everything if you have money and you are nothing if you don't? Make haste to earn money." Yet another person, a woman, preached, "Nowadays money is God. How many copper coins is conscience worth?" I was overwhelmed, I shuddered. No wonder they grudge every second and every penny and regard money above everything else. I see the world is ruled by goblins, devils, and monsters. Am I wrong? Or am I the real devil? Or I don't fit in with this world at all. I feel that life is suffering and human life is rightly a sea of suffering. The sea of suffering is borderless. Please return and repent for salvation. Return? What is return? Returning is death. Why die? For living is worse than death. How to die? Nirvana. How can nirvana be carried out? Self-improve and self-refine. How does one self-improve and self-refine? Raise consciousness and increase wisdom. What is wisdom? Wisdom is the supreme and complete understanding of life and death. How can one acquire supreme and complete enlightenment? By understanding what is life and what is death. Then what is life and what is death? That one is inexplicably brought into the world as a result of karma is called birth and life. That one rushes about blindly and departs the world unjustifiably is called death. Birth is accidental, is death inevitable? Both birth and death are inevitable. Since both death and birth are inevitable and individuals have no choice and cannot resist, then why do we have to understand life and death? By understanding death and life, one can cast off life and death. How can one get rid of life and death? One can do so by reaching the realm of no birth, no death. What is the realm of no birth, no death? Elysium world is the realms of no birth, no death. What is Elysium world? Elysium world is one of the 36 dimension spaces, namely the world described by Jesus and Sakyamuni. Is there really such a world? Or is it only a tale? Yes, there is, I am telling the truth. Then please demonstrate it to me. I cannot because it is another time-space which is invisible to naked eyes. The mirages that occur occasionally are part of Elysium world. Then there is no way to see it? Yes, there is. What way? By the telegnosis. What is telegnosis? A man has 6 sense organs of eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body and mind, which are respectively responsible for the 6 senses: vision, hearing, olfaction, taste, touch, and telegnosis. Telegnosis is the perception in everybody's consciousness and a spiritual nature apperception. Why cannot my telegnosis have such a capability? Because your telegnosis is too dull. Why is my telegnosis dull? Because it has been polluted. What has polluted my telegnosis? Your telegnosis has been polluted by images in nature and the values of human society and your prejudices. Then how can I restore my telegnosis? By awakening to truth. What is awakening to truth? Awakening to truth means getting to the bottom of a phenomenon. What is phenomenon? Phenomenon can be anything that we see through vision, anything that we hear through hearing, anything that we smell through olfaction, anything that we can know through our taste, and anything that we acquire through our sense of touch. According to you, there are too many phenomena. Yes, Buddhism talks about 84,000 Dharmapariyas, but actually Dharmapariyas are unlimited. What is Dharmapariyaya? Dharmapariyaya is a means to grasp a phenomenon and find out the ultimate essence of the phenomenon as essence. What is essence? Essence is something concealed which causes the occurrence of certain phenomenon. Then what is the ultimate essence of essence? The substrate causing the essence is the ultimate essence. That is to say, the greatest creator is the ultimate essence? Yes. How do we get to know the greatest creator? This book of mine can enlighten you on the understanding of the greatest creator. Oh, I see. What do you see? The birth of man is like falling into the sea of suffering, and so it is something lamentable. The death of man, however, is like being severed from the sea of suffering, and so it is something delightful. Yes, but not entirely so. Why? Because death is not the final resting place. Why is death not the final resting place? Didn't you say that man will enter the Elysium world after death? Death is only a surface phenomenon. Behind death is the transmigration of life. Some people will return to the human world after death. Some will become animals after death. Some will enter the 1,000-year world, and some will go to the 10,000-year world. Only a very limited number of people will go to the Elysium world after death. So how can we feel happy if some people are even worse and are more miserable than in the human world after death? Your preaching about pre-existence, next world, and transmigration of life is too inscrutable and incredible. How can we believe in something that cannot be proved by science? Science is materialism. Science cannot prove what is beyond the material world. But the universe is composed of material and non-material. Science can only prove half of the universe, not the other half. Take my consciousness, for example. How big is it? What color is it? How heavy is it? What shape does it have? Science cannot provide answers to these and many other questions. Therefore, you cannot completely negate what cannot be proved by science. Then can you prove that man has pre-existence and next world? Yes. One is the records about pre-existence in history, which can be found in the literatures of many nationalities. Another is the record of facts by International Near-Death Research Institute. And the third is the descriptions by the sages and saints like Jesus and Sakyamuni. These are only legends, hearsays, or religious doctrines and thus are not convincing. Can you come up with something new? Yes, homosexuality is an example. The rule for the biological world is that like sexes repel each other and unlike sexes attract each other. So why is there homosexuality? And why the homosexual love can be so dear to risk one's life? This involves the gender of his/her pre-existence. If a woman has a pre-existence as a man, the inertia of biology will continue to play its role and will incline her to instinctively like a woman instead of a man, although she has become a woman in this life. When she meets a woman with the same pre-existence, they will chime in easily and fall in love with each other. In the same way, if a man has his pre-existence as a woman, then he will still like man in this life. Instead of morbidity, homosexuality is a spontaneous instinct which may fade away with the passage of time. In addition, there is a saying that rivers and mountains may be changed, but it's hard to alter a man's nature. What is true nature? And why it is unchangeable? Nature is the innate characteristic. When does nature come into being? From primary school? From the time of while in mother's arms? Since the time of an embryo in the mother's body? Since the time of existence in the womb? Or since the combination of the sperm and ovum? If nature starts from the time mentioned above, there is no question of hard to alter a man's nature. Then we can conclude that nature has started centuries before, which is something deep-rooted, unlikely to change in a relatively short period of time. We can observe people around us or study on some special people. Then compare with the habits of some animals, we can easily figure out that certain people possess original nature of certain animals. Thus we can conclude that such people may have been certain animals in their pre-existence. For another example, for thousands of years philosophers and thinkers have raised the question, who am I? But failed to answer. Who am I? Am I my family? No, because I am still me even without my family. Am I my clothes? No, because I am still me after I have undressed myself. Am I my teeth? No, because I am still me after I have lost all my teeth. Am I my hair? No, because I am still me even if I have become bald. Am I my eyes? No, because I am still me even if I have become blind. Am I my legs? No, because I am still me even if I am amputated. Am I my heart? No, because I am still me after organ transplantation. Am I my blood? No, because I am still me even after I have blood transfusion. Neither this nor that, then who on earth am I? Well, I am Tathagata. What is Tathagata? Tathagata is the essential origin, the consciousness, soul, that already exists beyond the flesh and is enduring hardships in the world by living in this home of my flesh. When this home of my flesh ceases to exist, I am still there. All that I have to do is only to find another home. This is just like crossing a river. I borrowed a boat, but I would give up the boat and go on shore after I have got crossed. Buddhism preaches that an enlightened heart gives rise to insight into nature, and an insight into nature secures Buddhahood. If we have understood this principle, we are already Tathagata Buddha. We will go directly to Elysium world after death and don't have to come to the human world to continue the hard time. Well, also much for the simple introduction of life and death. My purpose is not to consider something as it stands, but rather to make it clear that the irreversible question of life and death is determined by the greatest creator, and that life and death has its purpose and meaning. Without the greatest creator, there would be no life, let alone the question of life and death. (27) 27. The crowing of roosters. Since I lived in the countryside when I was young, I remembered very well about the roosters crowing. Especially when I had to start out early, my diligent and kind mother would judge the time of day by roosters crowing, prepare breakfast and solid food in advance, and then wake me up. The roosters crow 3 times each night at regular time intervals. The first crowing is at about 3:30 in the early morning, the second approximately at 4:30, and the last around the dawn. The time of crowing may not be accurate because I have been away from my hometown for more than 2 decades and I am now living in an area where no crowing of roosters can be heard. Some people say that roosters crowing is to tell other roosters, "This is my territory and do not come in." Some say that roosters crow to attract hens. I would say that roosters crow to tell people the time. Prior to industrial civilization, man did not have clocks and watches. For survival, man had to know the time of the night. For example, 2 or more people were on a hunting trip and set the second crowing as the time to get up. Or a group of people were to complete certain tasks together and set the third crowing as the time to gather in the end of the village. Roosters crowing is involuntary. It is a conditioned reflex or induction of its biological clock in its body against the stimulation of the magnetic wave of the magnetic field when the Earth rotates to a certain angle. The rooster is not aware its crowing is to tell people the time of a day and serve the people, just like us humans who are living on the earth and are not aware that we are serving the greatest creator. The rooster cannot realize the meaning of its crowing late at night, but the man who creates the rooster is well aware of the meaning. In the universe there is no sound that does not have a purpose. The man that creates rooster does so for the convenience of human survival and thus has created this miracle. If the roosters can realize the purpose of their crowing, they will stop doing so when they see that many of their friends and relatives have been killed by mankind. If the crowing is to warn others of their own species not to violate their territory, they will not do so late at night, thinking to themselves, "Who will come to invade my territory in such late hours? I'd better conserve my energy and strength till tomorrow and fight off whoever has the nerve to invade my territory." If the crowing is to attract more hens, the rooster certainly knows that hens will be busy laying eggs and taking care of chicks during the day, so they will not pay any attention to him. It would be better if he takes a good rest now and keep his energy for the romances with his wives and concubines and mistresses. Therefore, the rooster's crowing is only automatic behavior, but the rooster's unintentional crowing is to serve the conscious purposes. Then who designed this purpose? Who but the greatest creator? '28. The wisdom of bees. What kind of house structure is most reasonable if we humans are to construct several hundred houses, every one of which is to accommodate only one person temporarily incapable of activity, all of which shall take the least material and labor, and all of which have the strongest structure, the most beautiful appearance, and the greatest cubage? Should the houses be made of interconnected cylinders? No, the different sizes of man's legs and waists may prove waste of some space, and the waste of space mean the waste of labor and materials. So it is not the most economical way of house building. In addition, cylinders have too little contact area between them, and it is not enough to serve as a wall for 2 rooms. Should the houses be made of interconnected cubes? No, the 4 corners will be a waste of space. It does not look very pretty either. Should the houses be made of adjoining octahedrons? No, the more sides a structure has, the more difficult it is to build and more time-consuming. Should the houses be made of many irregular shapes? No, the houses thus constructed will not appear good, besides a lot of more time and material may be wasted. Then what structure is most reasonable? The honeycomb of bees is the most ideal structure. The honeycomb is made up of hexagon columns. Since the lower part and middle part of the larva are different in sizes, the bottom of the honeycomb has been made into 3 congruent rhombuses. In 1712, the astronomer G.F. Maraldi of Paris Observatory concluded through measurement that the obtuse angle of the rhombus is 109.28 degrees and the acute angle is 70.32 degrees. For these figures, a French scientist specially consulted a Swiss mathematician. What is the most economical way in terms of materials to construct a hexagon column with the bottom consisting of 3 congruent rhombuses? The mathematician's result is that the column can use the least possible material only if the obtuse angle of the rhombuses is 109.28 degrees and the acute angle is 70.32 degrees. Wow! The bees are too wonderful. Long before the birth of man, they have solved the problem that man has not discovered and realized until now. Each bee knows that the column can be constructed most effectively and economically only if the obtuse and acute angles of the rhombuses are respectively 109.28 degrees and 70.32 degrees. For us man, only the greatest mathematicians can work out the result. How can ordinary people compare with those tiny bees? Are bees smarter, more intelligent, and wiser than man? If this is the case, why don't the bees know for whom they have toiled by gathering honey from hundreds of flowers? Man is not only reluctant to give to others what belongs to him, but is always calculating to encroach upon what belongs to others, even once occupy all the properties of the world for his own good. So are the tiny bees carrying forward the unselfish communism style? If bees have such advanced wisdom and so open a mind, they must have, according to the theory of evolution, evolved into creatures far superior to man long ago, since they have come to the earth long before the birth of man. Why are they overtaken by men in evolution? The founder of the theory of evolution, Darwin, exclaimed, "Natural selection is powerless to explain such perfect structure of the honeycomb, because as we see it, either in terms of labor or the use of beeswax, honeycomb conforms to the theory of maximum economy and is absolutely perfect." Then, even the originator of the theory of evolution has realized that the wisdom of bees does not result from evolution. We are also clear that the wisdom of bees cannot compare with that of man. And bees would certainly not carry forward the unselfish communism style for man that has been severely exploiting them. Then there is only one origin of their wisdom: instinct. What is instinct? Instinct is the capability possessed after birth. Instinct is the capability possessed after birth proved to be contradictory with the theory of evolution. So is evolution theory a fallacy? Doesn't the inborn capability prove that everything has been what it is now from the very beginning? Doesn't the inborn capability prove that things are not developed through evolution but are created? Doesn't the inborn capability prove the ability of the greatest creator that has created everything? Aren't the degrees of the acute and obtuse angles of the rhombuses at the bottom of the honeycomb designed by the greatest creator and added to the instinct of the bees? Do you still want to deny the existence of the greatest creator?